Today's guest works across hundreds of middle market manufacturers, and she sees all the issues they grapple with, as well as all the innovative things they're doing, both in marketing and in business in general. Today, we're going to be touching on some of the things that are keeping manufacturers awake at night, such as responsible use of AI and crisis communications related to those influencers that can also help your brand get in front of your target audience. We'll also talk about some of the struggles that women face within manufacturing organizations as they want to grow their careers. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Kristin Graybill. She's the Vice President of Commercial Strategy at the Manufacturers Alliance. Welcome to the show, Miss Kristin.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
What's it like in DC today?
It's actually a gorgeous day, very sunny in the low 80s, so kind of a perfect day here.
Oh man, that sounds great. We're a little humid and sticky here in Austin, so already it's time to take a trip, I guess. Come up to DC and see you.
That would be great. Would love to have you.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to have you on the show today and want to learn more about your organization and what you're doing over there. But first, tell me a bit about your career and what led you to the Manufacturers Alliance.
Sure. Well, again, thank you for having me. I've been very lucky and frankly intentional to switch things up in my career. So I started with a very DC career, working for the legislative branch for a congressman. I switched over to the executive branch and worked for the EPA and as a civilian for the Navy. And then I spent almost a decade working for big tech companies in the government and defense space in a marketing consulting agency. And then ultimately, I joined one of those companies for some time. I was looking for a little bit of a change of pace, and I came across Manufacturers Alliance. And while I'm here, I oversee our marketing, sales, research, partnerships, and public events, essentially the things that are our new revenue streams. And the one thing I like is it keeps me learning, and that's something that is really important to me in my career overall.
What are some of the big differences you saw when you moved from kind of the political scene, the legislative scene over to industrial? I mean, that had to be a little bit discombobulating at first, right?
Well, I will say they do tend to have a better work-life balance, to be honest. It's one thing I really appreciate about my job now. There is a better work-life balance. I would say, having been a lot in the defense space, it was a very male-dominated space. And so manufacturing is also a very male-dominated space. And then I think tech and industrial really aren't that far away because there is so much technology built into industrial systems and factories today. It isn't that dissimilar. I was on a factory tour probably last year, didn't even have to put on protective equipment, just had to make sure I didn't have my high heels on and walk through where they were making incredible, really cool products. But so much of it was deeply technical that I think the perception of what factories might look like are very different than the reality of what a lot of factories look like in today's world.
I absolutely agree. Well, that's a nice segue into why are you touring these manufacturing facilities and what the heck is the Manufacturers Alliance to begin with?
So we are a 90-year-old nonprofit organization. We focus on leaders at mid-cap to large manufacturing companies. And we do this through some peer programs, which are called our Council and our Circle programs. And so these are for functional leaders, from our chief marketing officers to our CFOs to our heads of manufacturing. And we also do that through the research and content we talked about a little bit in what I oversee today. And so it's a really interesting role where we're bringing together essentially some of the companies that are helping drive the economies of the world today.
Yeah. Okay. So most of it is educational, helping peer-to-peer communications, doing research, helping these manufacturers stay ahead. Is any of it legislative as well? Do you still touch
It
the
is
old?
not. So we don't lobby. We do certainly
Okay.
talk about policy and regulations because they're
Yeah.
relevant to manufacturers, but it's more of sharing of information and what that means for our members versus having a stance or a policy bent.
Got you. Okay. Well, what do you love most and I don't know, maybe least about your job today?
Um, I think we hit it a little bit. So one of the coolest parts of my job is I get to listen to leaders from dozens of areas on what excites them, what's coming up, what keeps them up at night, and then really what that means for us as an organization and for what it means for us as a country. It's essentially being a fly on the wall into some of the most powerful boardrooms, and it's truly fascinating to continue learning. I've also been able to grow and maintain a team that I'm proud of each and every day. I really appreciate my team. And then probably the least favorite part of my job is also one of the best parts of my job, but is change management. So we're going through some big changes as we adjust to how manufacturers are changing and how the world of work is changing. And that's a ton of fun and it's fulfilling. But as we all know, change can be hard sometimes too.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, is it changing right now, especially in the world of marketing. I mean, us alone. So, what I find interesting about your job is you have this bird's eye view into all these different manufacturers and how they're approaching marketing. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to have you on to the show was just kind of like as with an agency, when we work across a multitude of clients, you're seeing even more, I would say probably hundreds of manufacturers, if not more. So, what are some of the trends or challenges or things that you're seeing across these companies?
Well, I think one of the things that is ubiquitous across any conversation today is AI. And while generative AI has been trialed in marketing and media for a few years, we're starting to see use cases across manufacturing operations as well. So, using Gen AI and deep machine learning to accelerate the digital transformation in ways that were probably unimagined a decade ago, sometimes even a few years ago. And what's interesting about that is AI isn't really new to manufacturing. It's actually been around for about a decade within kind of the operational sphere. But being able to add this generative AI on top of it is really changing the face of how manufacturers are working. And then from the marketing perspective, I think there's three really specific things to AI that we're talking about on a regular basis. And the first is legal. And, with all generative AI content and media tools, like I can type something in right now and create an image, a video, a movie, just out of the ideas or prompts that come out of my head. So, how are we ensuring that you have appropriate copyright protections? How are we ensuring that there's proper ethics in the products and campaigns that companies are putting out? And Wendy, as you mentioned, if you're working with an agency, how are you making sure that those agencies and the stakeholders and those partners that are critical to your success are also upholding all of the necessary kind of legal and ethical standards as part of your product as it comes out? And I think one of the challenges here, although we all want to do the right thing, is that things are moving so quickly that keeping up with it is a really critical and ongoing part of kind of that legal marketing interface right now.
Yeah, yeah,
The other area I would see is knowledge management. And so while we've been seeing this for a little bit on the factory floor with workers, particularly legacy retiring workers leaving and trying to train new talent and being able to use AI to do that, you can also use it in marketing. So, from a marketing perspective, if you can teach a tool your brand and your brand standards, you can greatly reduce staff time. And I'm not saying necessarily that you can reduce overhead, but it reduces the level of kind of that nitty gritty for the staff and allows them to do more impactful work. So I think there's a really high ROI there. And then back to our legal friends, we're also seeing a ton of AI in legal terms and conditions, things like that. So as you are working with your agencies or other tools that they're using, you can pop that into your AI tool and it's going to tell you, do these T and C's to these terms and conditions meet the needs of our company as we go through kind of some of these marketing campaigns and initiatives that we're putting forward. And then I think kind of that third theme ties right into that, which is keeping it in-house. So while you or I can go on ChatGPT or any of its competitors today and kind of play with it, most big companies have brought the tools in-house. And so they're telling the tools, here are the parameters, here's how you learn. And so they're getting all the benefits of the tools without the intellectual property or IP risks. But the flip side, of course, is it can be limiting because you're teaching the tool what to use and it doesn't have the breadth of knowledge that a tool based on open source kind of internet-based thinking has. So really interesting time for
It
marketing right
is.
now.
Yeah, and of course those tools, those closed loop tools will get better and will get smarter. So I think the future is bright in that regard. But I like what you said about protecting your IP and having that tool and then training it with these aging workforce that are on their way out. Imagine if you could have, sales guy Bob with 30 years of experience that can train this tool. And even when Bob retires, you can still have Bob present in your organization, if you will, as a persona that you can brainstorm with as you're creating content and ask questions of. So some real possibilities there that used to be so time intensive in the past. So.
Absolutely. I think it's really fascinating. And honestly, we're still on the early edge. I expect if you and I are having a catch up 5 years from now, who knows what has happened by then? It's all just moving very quickly.
Yeah, we'll be laughing for sure.
Sure.
Oh, how do companies manage their brand? Have you found when it comes to AI? Have you found that that's training the tools within a closed loop chat GPT? Are you finding people using marketing tools such as a Jasper or a Writer that has that application layer? What kind of things are you seeing on your end?
Um, I would say it varies, of course, depending on company, but the majority of companies that I'm seeing is you have that overarching comprehensive corporate policy, and then you have your departments teaching in very different ways. So I would say in the corporate offices, which is like your marketing, your legal, your HR, you're seeing more of these tools being brought in and taught by those specific departments and not having a ton of cross communication with each other yet. I think it's early. I think it's going there. But that's what I'm mostly seeing is it's applying on top of some tools they have. They're also a myriad of so many new companies and tools out there that both do this themselves. And I think most, just from a marketing perspective, from my background, if you look at the tools that we even use in house, your marketing automation, your sales automation, your design tools, they've all just been buying and building parts of these into the tools that we already have. So you're seeing a combination of what becomes available in your software versus what layers on top based on the company and how they kind of integrate together. Sometimes well, sometimes less well. And companies and organizations are certainly working through that.
Yeah, I love that I don't know if we want to call it a forcing factor or a collaboration, but either way, having these groups talk and maybe share a bit more knowledge cross-departmental, it seems like it would be a net positive for the company once they get their processes down and have that cross-functional team and all of that fun stuff. Although I guess it does put marketing and legal together, which we don't always, get excited about as marketers.
I think marketing and legal will have to be best friends from now on. That's kind of going to be the rule, I
There.
think.
Well, what other trends are you seeing?
Back to this legal theme, I'm also seeing this interesting trend in audit. So if you had asked me before I'd taken this job, Kristin, as a marketing leader, how much do you have to interact with your internal auditors? I would say almost never, right? But so we're seeing a really different level of risk assessment than you saw a few years ago. So we have one of our members is a commercial product company. And if you scroll Instagram or TikTok, I pretty much guarantee you're going to come across them. And what their auditors are finding is because of the reputational risk, not only is this a legal concern, this is now an audit concern. So if you think about an influencer who maybe has your product and one of those ambassadors, what if they say something or do something that goes against your brand values? What if they take another client that has an affiliation that does something that is against your values? And so this is a new space, again, where marketing, legal, and audit are working together to determine how to protect their companies. But then there's this balance of how do you do that without being so risk averse that you miss out on the brand exposure that comes with these influencers and ambassadors and other types of non-traditional media. So you're also seeing it kind of play into B2B now. So there's just a really interesting lens of when your customer, your consumer is everywhere, even in a non-consumer based product, how are you reaching them? But then what is the risk now? So again, I think it's a really fascinating time to be in marketing.
It really is. And if we had had this conversation 5 years ago, I don't know that we would use the word influencer as applied to this B to B to B to B market. So new times, and you're right, there is risk at bringing in influencers, especially external to the company, but even your own employees that have their own personalities and voices outside of the walls of their cubicle, or their home offices. And so, how do we balance that, but still take advantage of that opportunity? Are there specific examples that you can think of where companies have put either policies in place or done things to mitigate those risks?
I would say more from a HR perspective than a marketing perspective. I think you just hit it in one of your examples in terms of what your employees do. So a lot of times we think private time is our time, but now private time is everybody's time if you choose to film it and live stream it or be everywhere. So, I've seen a few examples where companies have had employees do some things that really went against their values and put their companies at risk, and then have to figure out how to adjust the HR and communication to ensure that when I say we can't do this in the workplace, it also means it's not okay to be doing that publicly, particularly when you represent the company. And so I think the interesting part is, where is that line, right? Like, if I have my branded t-shirt on and I clearly represent the company, is that different than if I'm in my private space, not representing the company, but choosing to put myself out there? So I do think the risks are larger, but I also think it's a learning place where we're all learning together. And I would say in the examples that I've seen, I think the companies took action and took correct action quickly, which is a very positive thing.
Yeah. So this sounds like an opportunity for proactive crisis communications, or working through scenarios between your communications team, HR, potentially legal. Maybe we can leave legal aside on this one, but at least have those what if scenarios and be prepared for some of this, right?
Yes. I remember early in my career working on crisis comms. To your point, we were worried about natural disasters, man-made disasters. You're worried about different things, and the list just
Yeah.
has gotten a lot larger over the past
Right. A
2 years.
death on the manufacturing floor or a serious injury. Right. Things that, yeah, very different than what if someone goes off the rails on Instagram or TikTok or something. Yeah.
Definitely.
Very different. Okay. Interesting. What are you seeing? So now that we have this generational turnover, right? And a lot of manufacturers are so worried about recruiting, and that's come to the forefront. And it's really, in a very positive way, push these, I'll call them old school brands and old school approaches to marketing, and push them into, okay, if we want to recruit the next gen employees as well as customers, we have to really become a little more modern in our tactics and refresh our brand. So that's a great thing. I'm wondering what you're seeing in that regard of companies just pushing themselves out in order to attract those younger engineers and employees.
Yeah, I think people who are doing it well have realized that they're probably not going to come to you, right? And specifically in STEM and engineering careers, where you have so much competition in terms of tech and other sectors that are not manufacturing. I think the companies that are doing it well are being very proactive in going to different types of job fairs, of putting themselves out there, of doing some really interesting things on your traditional channels like a LinkedIn or some of your recruiting advertising, but then also back to that Instagram, TikTok, all of the new tools that kind of, change every day, to ensure that they're kind of getting their brand and message. I don't know that they're necessarily recruiting there, but just like any other branding activity, it's how do I have that pervasiveness and that brand acknowledgement, so that when I do come calling, or when you do see me trying to recruit you, you're like, I know who you are and I like you, and here's why I like you. So I
Yeah.
do think we're seeing that a lot. And a lot of our manufacturers are older than the Alliance. They're 100 plus, 150-year-old companies. And I will applaud them for doing some really interesting, innovative things that kind of follow in that theme of innovation that we've seen from manufacturing in the United States over the past few centuries. So I think that as talent becomes such a critical asset and the talent crisis, frankly, becomes a more critical problem, you're going to see enhanced efforts, dollars, all of those things being put towards getting the best of the best.
Yeah, and really showing off that culture, like you said, in subtle ways that just show up on different channels. I love that you just called LinkedIn a traditional channel. Like I just that's and you're right. You're absolutely right at this point. I think that's where it belongs. But I had kind of an old lady moment where I'm like, what? That's great. Well, I'd like to switch gears now and talk a little bit about your research. So, as a researcher myself, I know that's a huge investment of resources. So, why is this important to the Manufacturing Alliance, and what kind of research do you do?
Sure. So it's really core to what we do. So I think I mentioned earlier, we're an old organization. We were founded in 1933. And at that point in time, we started as the Machinery and Allied Products Institute. And it was a way for mostly Midwestern manufacturers to have representation in Washington following World War One. And that early history was really very focused on economic research. What's the economic impact as the country was in another major change point? And as we've evolved over time, our research has shifted away from economics because there's a lot of great economics content out there into more career-focused content that supports our members. So we have a 501c3 organization called the Manufacturers Alliance Foundation, and we do research that really supports the whole sector, focused on getting it to grow, have that renaissance in this country. And then our team also does a lot of member only research, which is a lot of benchmarking and deep dives into a lot of the business decisions that those functional areas that I mentioned earlier need to help advance their career. So research is really core to what we do. And I'm really proud of the team that I have that's working on it right now.
Yeah. Well, I know that one of your research areas of recent times was focused on women's leadership and manufacturing. And I'm really curious to hear what were some of the findings and recommendations in this area.
Thank you, Wendy. So this one is one that was particularly impactful to me. So I really loved putting this research together. So the reason we undertook this research was we had this hypothesis that women are a critical asset to meet the sector's talent crisis. And if companies and individuals can reduce some of those obstacles facing women, what can the future of manufacturing look like? So just for some scene setting, you may know women's participation in manufacturing has been stagnant around 30%, and it's been there since the 1970s. So we have not been
Wow.
making any gains. And of that, only 12% of C-suite roles are held by women. So we're really marching in place compared to a lot of other sectors in our economy. But what we found in our research is that part of the challenges facing women in manufacturing leadership is frankly the limited number of women in middle management. So as we're looking to promote people and bring them up, there are very few seats at the table in middle management to bring up. Um, and then as we looked at the individual experience, we did a quantitative and qualitative piece of research, and we asked over 100 senior manufacturing executives, do you believe the manufacturing industry has made significant progress providing equal opportunities and pay to women in the past 5 years? We asked about 5 years to kind of ignore that COVID period as well. And in this case, 82% of men said yes, compared to 38% of women. And so I'm not here trying to vilify men. There are amazing male mentors and advocates and sponsors. But what I think this data point shows us is that the experience changes dramatically based on who you are and where you sit in this industry. And I think the more light that we can shine, the more we can all work together to make the industry more diverse. And that makes the industry healthier, stronger, and more competitive. So as a business person, if we're talking about talent is one of those critical things that's going to keep us above our competitors, being able to attract and retain this type of talent is actually critical to our bottom line revenue. The research also has success strategies for individuals, for people, and then for companies. And I'm not going to dive into them. It's deep, it's long, but I would say one of the main themes that you see across the company recommendations is intentionality, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And I think if companies can be really intentional about where they're recruiting, where they're looking for people, and what policies they put in place, to create a more flexible and diverse workforce, they're going to find amazing talent. It just might take tweaking what you did in the past to trying something new and seeing how it works for you.
Yeah. And if this is a company priority, there's certainly a role for marketing here to help, include this and think about diversity campaigns under the recruiting arm. How can you have that reflected in your key messages, in your photographs? I mean, there's so many ways marketing can make an impact here. If
Absolutely.
people want to get their hands on the report, is this a members only thing? Or?
It's not. This is public. So we would love manufacturersalliance.org is our website. You can find it there. I think it's on the homepage. If not, it's definitely in our research tab towards the top, but would love to have as many eyes as we can on it. I think it's really critical and interesting research for manufacturers.
I'll include a link in our show notes as well so people
Thank
can
you.
find it. Well, gosh, we've covered a lot of ground here. I just want to maybe pull back out and seek some advice. What would you say to marketers that are listening? They're in manufacturing. They're looking to make a outsized impact on their company's growth. What advice do you have for them?
I would say when I first came into this industry, particularly thinking B2B, distribution, there was hesitancy towards a lot of what I would call push the envelope or really creative activities. I think even in the short time that I've been in this role, we've seen consumer behavior in these technical and B2B roles change. Your customers are doing more homework. Your customers are, checking you out before they're taking that call. And so even, we talked about some of the risk aversion that's happening today. I would encourage manufacturing marketing to be fun, to be engaging. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you're a senior engineer, a supply chain executive, you work on the shop floor, or you're a CFO. We're all people. And I think if you can resonate with people, you're going to win. And so that would be my advice.
Excellent advice. Gosh, thank you so much, Kristin. Where can people connect with you and learn more about the Manufacturing Alliance?
Again, thank you, Wendy. This has been such a fun time. We are kind of everywhere as Manufacturers Alliance. So website, manufacturersalliance.org. It's a lot of characters, but once you get it, it'll be good. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, Facebook, all our social channels. You can also find those all in the footer of our website and just do a quick click and you can find us there.
All the socials, even those traditional ones like LinkedIn.
Yes.
Love it. Well, gosh, thank you so much for being on the show today, Kristin.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.